Good afternoon, good morning, colleagues. This is a topic which I would like to deliver, which is on basically on pesticide formulations and their application methods for sandfly vector control. And I will cover in this topic major public health pesticide classes, types of pesticide formulations, packaging, labeling, the insecticides that are pesticides that are pre-qualified by WHO. What are the application methods and their rationale, and little information on safe disposal of pesticide waste and used containers. As you may know that WHO has recommended several interventions for vector control, and this is a list that comprises both sandflies and other vectors. But primarily our discussion today, I will really focus more on long-lasting nets and indoor residual spraying as the core tools for sandfly vector control. As you can see, it is here in this table. Until now, we thought that there were only 4 classes of insecticides used in vector control, but actually I have prepared this summary slide to give you an overall overview of what are the major pesticide classes that are used in different ways for vector control. So if you look at the IRS, indoor residual spraying, then we have 5 classes now. So earlier we had OC, which is DDT, organophosphate, carbamate, and pyrethroids. But about 3 years ago, another compound called clothianidine was added, and this is a neonicotinoid class. So for IRS purpose, we have now 5 classes. Then we have several long-lasting insecticidal nets, as you may know, and these are primarily pyrethroids, but at least 3 more compounds have been added in different products, which is chlorphenapirase pyrrole, and then there is a compound pyriproxyfen, and then synergist PBO. And then there are other classes which are for other products, which this does not really relate to sandflies. So space spray, larvicides, repellents, molluscicides, rodenticides, aircraft disinfection products. So this will give you a quick overview of what different compounds are in different classes that are used for vector control. In the end, of course, the core interventions against sandfly vectors include indoor residual spraying in human dwellings and households, as well as in cattle sheds, and long-lasting insecticidal nets or insecticide-treated nets at home, which is, of course, least preferred these days. And these are therefore the core interventions recommended by WHO. But then there are other tools which many people have evaluated in research projects or in field in different settings. And these include, for example, durable wall linings. It doesn't have a WHO policy recommendation as of now because public health impact of durable wall lining on leishmaniasis has not been demonstrated. Then insecticidal paint also doesn't have WHO policy recommendation for want of public health impact data. Repellents for personal production are primarily recommended for mosquitoes, but then in the same way, if needed, repellents can be certainly used for personal production against sandflies in very specific situations. Personal production using repellents cannot be a public health intervention because of operational reasons. Then some people have tested insecticide-treated clothing and chadars in Afghanistan, for example, or in the Middle East part of the Mediterranean region. But again, there is no WHO policy recommendations with regard to these products. So these products basically doesn't have a policy recommendations in the sense that nobody has created epidemiological impact data to show to show that use of these products at a community-wide scale will actually impact on transmission of leishmaniasis. That is why these are new tools under development or testing, but we don't have a WHO policy recommendations for their operational use. Then this slide shows insecticide or pesticide formulations for all vector control purposes. It is not merely for sandflies. I wanted to just give you a quick overview of what are the different formulations that are used even for mosquito control or sandfly control. And then in the next slide, I will more focus on sandflies. So in this case, we have several formulations marketed and pre-qualified by WHO. And I would not read these rows, but you can read because this presentation will be anyway shared with you. And primarily for sand flies, these are the products that I have listed here. So this includes insecticides in emulsifier concentrate formulations for indoor residual spraying. This is the definition of an emulsifier concentrate. Once again, you can read it at your leisure. Then granule formulation, again insecticides are used for indoor residual spraying in granule formulations. And then long-lasting insecticidal net is also considered a formulation. Although it's a product, but in true technical sense, we have agreed with FAO that long-lasting insecticidal net will also be considered a formulation because it contains a polymer and insecticide core and some additives. Then suspension concentrate, SC formulation, again for indoor residual spraying. Water dispersible granules, again for indoor residual spraying. And wettable powders, again for indoor residual spraying. So in this slide, you have products that are for indoor residual spraying as well as long-lasting insecticidal nets. And these two categories of products are therefore the insecticides that are used in core interventions against sandfly vectors. Then insecticides are marketed in different packagings, but I specifically wanted to show you these two pictures. On the left-hand side is the packaging. It's an aluminum packaging containing 75% DDT. So it's a powder. WP means a wettable powder. So this powder is marketed. This is just an example. It could be deltamethrin or it can be any other insecticide for indoor residual spraying. But just an example, I have put up this slide. So this pouch contains a powder. So in order to apply this powder, operators in the field, they open it, they cut it, open it, mix it with the water in the sprayer tank, shake it and apply. This process involves therefore handling the pesticide because when you cut the pouch or pour the insecticide or even wait for specific purpose, then workers may come in contact, their skin may come in contact, their eyes may come in contact. Sudden splash of the powder from the pouch when you open it can also contaminate eyes and mouth and nose. So therefore, there are lots of risks of handling these insecticides when they are marketed in sachets or bigger packets. But now there is a new technology which is water soluble bag on right hand side. So in this case, this outer part is a water soluble bag. It is a cellulose material, and then inside are granules. So now they come pre-weighed. They have a specific weight, and one packet or one sachet is good for one spray tank. So you cut the packet, which is again a aluminum foil, and then inside that you will find this package. So worker can take out from that aluminum foil this package or sachet and put it into the sprayer, add water, close the lid, shake it and apply. So then the advantage is that there is no need of calibrating because it is already, you know the weight of it. Handling and mixing is easy. There is less risk of contamination because this insecticide is not available on the outer part of the sachet. And therefore this reduces the exposure of the worker as well as the environmental risks of exposing or spillage of insecticides when you weigh it for putting it into the sprayer tank. So therefore the preferred and safer packaging these days is water soluble bags or what we call as SB formulations. So if I may go back to the earlier slide, then here you will find WG, that is water dispersible granules packaged in water soluble bags. So now we call it WGSB. An important point that I missed previously is that all these formulations are named with two letters. EC, EW, SC, WP, WG, CSD, UL. So these are just two letters. This is an international convention agreed between FAO, WHO, and Crop Life International, which are innovative pesticide industry. That all pesticide formulations will be shown with two-letter formulation code. In here, it is you have written PE also, so which is actually polymer enhanced SC formulation, or in this case WGSB means is water soluble bag in which waterable dispersible granules have been packaged. So basically the formulation is WG and SB is the packaging. So that was this slide. Then going forward, WHO has been setting up WHO specifications of pesticides or insecticides for quality control purposes. So earlier this responsibility was with WHO pesticide evaluation scheme, which I headed for several years. And now since 2017, this responsibility has been handed over to a new unit in WHO called the pre-qualification unit. So they are responsible for setting WHO specifications for further new compounds or formulations. A WHO specification, a WHO or FAO specification basically means the parameters and criteria defining the physical appearance, physical and chemical properties of technical and formulated pesticides linked with hazard and risk profiles. There are 3-4 things in this definition. So we are talking of criteria for physical appearance. How does that insecticide look like or pesticide look like? What are its physical and chemical properties? And both of the technical active ingredient as well as the formulated ready to use product in the field. And then this formulation actually provides information on the hazards and risks of those insecticides when they are used under operational conditions. So there is a WHO FAO manual on pesticide specifications, which is placed on right side of this slide. There's a link which you can access this document. And if you want to read more about the pesticide specification, then you can download this document. But essentially, in a pesticide specification, the broader parameters include definition or identification of an active ingredient and its content. So suppose we say 20% WP, that means in 100 gram of the powder, there is 20 gram of active ingredient. And that active ingredient will be identified by its name. So suppose it is delta methane, so then identity is for delta methane. In this specification, we also mention relevant impurities. So relevant impurities are actually toxicants that need to be specifically pointed out, because the quality control laboratories will then test those impurities, their presence or absence. But non-relevant impurities can also be present in a formulation. So for example, water is a non-relevant impurity because it doesn't cause any harm. And then there are physical parameters in the formulations, which will include pH of the powder or liquid, how much is after sieving test, how much coarse material is left on top of this sieve. So that tells about the granularity of the powder or formulation. Suspensibility in water, how much foam it makes, how quickly it gets wetted when added with water. And these different parameters are mentioned in this document about each formulation. And then of course, temperature, storage, stability. In WHO's and FAO's terms, a formulation will be accepted only when it withstands 54 degrees Celsius temperature for 14 days or 40 degrees temperature for 4 weeks and likewise. So that means the rigorous temperature storage stability test is applied before WHO pre-qualifies a particular product for public health purpose. And that shows that under field conditions, when temperatures can be as high as 40 degrees, 45 degrees, 50 degrees, for those many days for which specification is specified, you can store the product under that harsh condition of temperature. This is a table that gives WHO pre-qualified insecticides for indoor residual spraying. And you may already know that we have these compounds in organochlorine, organophosphate, carbamate, pyrethroid classes. But recently, in the neonicotinoid class, we added 2 new formulations. One is a clothianidine WG formulation, which is just pure clothianidine formulation. It doesn't contain any other insecticide. But there is another one called, so the clothianidine one is called Sumisealed in brand name, by brand name. Whereas there is a combined formulation or a mixture formulation which contains clothianidine and delta methane. This is called Qdora fusion by Bayer. So this contains not only a pyrethroid but also a neonicotinoid. So these are the 2 new additions, which is the 5th class of pesticides for indoor residual spraying. Now this slide gives not only the class groups, but also the dosages to be applied and recommended by WHO, and how long these dosages are effective in field. This is a range. So if you apply, for example, it is 1 to 2. So if you apply a higher range, then this also gives a range of application 3 to 6 months under different field conditions. So likewise, if I say delta methane, this gives a range, lower range and higher range. Lower range is good for 3 months, higher range is good for 6 months. So this is how these ranges have been set as far as possible. And you can refer this table because this presentation will be also shared with you. Then this is a slide that summarizes the WHO pre-qualified long-lasting insecticidal nets. We have recommended basically nets with 3 pyrethroid compounds. One is a group of nets which contains alpha cypermethrin. Some nets may contain PBO or chlorphenapir or pyriproxyfen. The second group of long-lasting nets contain deltamethrin. Once again, it may contain PBO as a synergist. And then the third group of net is a permethrin nets. There are just 2 nets, one of which contains PBO. PBO basically is a synergist, which is a chemical that enhances the effectiveness of a pyrethroid because it blocks the enzyme activity in mosquitoes or sandflies, and then it will improve the efficacy of this insecticide. Incidentally, even in the previous slides, I wanted to tell you that this slide is basically for mosquitoes. But historically in WHO, we have never had separate trials for sandflies. And therefore, by implications, all these compounds and all these dosages are also equally good for sandfly control. And also long-lasting nets. In several countries, long-lasting nets have also been tested and used for sandflies. So this is also equally a good intervention. We have recently conducted systematic reviews on the effectiveness of long-lasting nets and IRS products. I think in the couple of weeks, we will release the results of those systematic reviews. But basically, these are the 2 core interventions against sandfly vectors. And then, of course, this table gives insecticides that can be used for treating mosquito nets conventionally at home. But of course, this is not the intervention that is now being promoted anymore because this requires 6 months or more frequent treatment of nets. So these days, more focus is on long-lasting nets than on treatment of nets conventionally. Now, moving on to the equipment for vector control, we have published this guideline in 2018, which provides specifications for different equipment. And this guideline is basically to standardize the development of specifications of major equipment by the industry. In future, if they want to develop further equipment, then they can refer this document. But also this document is a good resource for vector control program managers like yourself in order to know which equipment are good and what are their specifications in order for you to decide which one to buy. In equipment, we also have recently published personal protective equipment guideline. This is a joint FAO-WHO document because insecticides are also used in agriculture. So personal protection is equally important for agricultural workers. So therefore, this is a joint guideline. And you will learn a lot about, this is a very comprehensive and very valuable guideline. I encourage you to download it using the link that is provided below the document. And this gives a lot of details about overalls, gloves, goggles, face mask, hats, and different kind of face masks. So you must therefore download this document and look at it. And then there are several hand compression sprays in terms of equipment for indoor residual spraying. I just put up 4 examples, and this is not to promote any specific equipment brand, but just to give you an example that there are now there are now sprayers that are available with the WHO specifications. And in this case, particularly, the emphasis these days is that it should have a control flow valve. So this one has, this also has this, the blue one is a control flow valve. And in this particular brand, there is a control flow valve here. The purpose of a control flow valve is that it provides uniform discharge when you pressurize the pump and start spraying. Then from the first minute to the last minute, the amount of insecticide discharged from the pump is constant. So therefore, when you start spraying in a house, then the very first minute and very last minute you will deliver the same amount of insecticide on surfaces, and therefore there will be uniformity in the spray. Normally, we conduct a 5 days training for IRS operations, and therefore it is too short a time to really give further details. But we will be really happy to organize some more training courses for your region in this year or maybe next year. And this is maybe another view of the same picture, that these control flow valves are attached with the lines of the sprayers, or they are already inbuilt in the body of the equipment. And therefore, when you buy new equipment in future, then you must always buy equipment that are attached with the control flow valve. But if you have older equipment of any of these type, then you can even buy separately the control flow valves in order to maintain high quality spray in field. So this is a close-up of the control flow valve. So this is the nozzle body which contains the nozzle, and this is the valve. And the nozzle itself, if you look at the picture, then nozzle itself, there is a plastic body outside which is yellow in color, and inside is this grayish piece which is the ceramic nozzle. So this nozzle is not steel; it is a ceramic made, just like our tea cups or plates that we use. And because the ceramic material is very hard, even harder than steel, therefore it lasts longer than, much longer actually, than the steel make nozzles. So therefore we now encourage that control flow valve with 1.5 bar and nozzles with 8002 specification should be procured in future in order to maintain high quality spray and less wear and tear of the equipment. So when you use this equipment, then with 7.5 liter load of liquid in a tank, you can apply 250 square meter area with 30 milliliter per square meter of the spray rate or discharge rate. And this is the 550 milliliter plus minus 10 is the discharge rate per minute. But if you don't use it, then you need actually half liter more, and then you spray actually 20% less area. It is just 200 square meter with the same amount of, with 8 liter of volume. So it, therefore, in terms of ergonomics, you have lesser load on the worker's shoulder, and you cover more area with lesser water. So in water scarce areas, actually this technology is even better than having much more water and higher load on the back of the sprayman. And this is a picture of the control flow valves. Different kind of valves are available in the market, but for public health purposes, make sure that you always buy a 1.5 bar sprayer. Sometimes some companies may have a different color, although these other colors are for agriculture purposes. But even if some company makes a yellow color, for example, 1.5 bar pump, then you always must buy a 1.5 bar control flow valve for attachment with the spray equipment. And when you attach a control flow valve, then the spray is much more uniform. So for example, this is the uniform spray. But when you don't spray, then it can be draining on the wall, or you can look at it that this is lot of liquid is flowing down, and this is not a good idea. And therefore, uniform spray requires that we attach a constant or control flow valve. So these are the different examples, but particularly in this, I wanted to show you that training of spray operators is very, very important in order to effectively use the equipment and to provide a proper spray. Otherwise, even if you have a good equipment, then it doesn't really help. Then quickly 2-3 more slides, and I wanted to also briefly tell you something on shelf life of pesticides. We receive several questions from different people about shelf life. So usually in terms of standards, WHO FAO sets shelf life of 2 years for each product. So when the formulated products are released from the factory, then on the date of release of the product from the factory, it is 2 years. So that means within the 2 year period, if a product is kept under optimum storage conditions, then the formulation maintains the WHO FAO specification. But suppose during the 2 years time, if you are not able to use that formulation, then you can extend the life of the shelf life of the product by sending a small sample to the manufacturer, who will then analyze the product to comply with the FAO specification. And if that product still complies with the specification, then the life of the your useful life of the package can be extended by the manufacturer, and they will say, okay, use it in next 6 months to a year, and you must then use it. So this is the story of the shelf life. This is just to maintain the quality. Then every product that is supplied also comes with a material safety data sheet. Basically, the data sheet tells you about the formulation name, the formulation percentage, the formulation type, and different other parameters, including where to contact in case there was an event of toxicity in the field. So there is always a 24/7 hotline number and telefax in this material safety data sheet, because these data sheets are released by the manufacturers. They provide a 24/7 service in case there was an event of toxicity. Otherwise, the material safety data sheet, or MSDS, gives every detail about the product, including the hazard information about that particular product. Coming now over to the safe transportation storage, I will not go in detail, but just would like to say that we do not have very elaborate guidelines on safe transportation. So whatever guideline is available is using this link, although these guidelines may be revised in future. And then there are also guidelines on disposal of waste and obsolete insecticides. But specifically, I wanted to tell you that when obsolete pesticides and used containers are created and they are dumped in one place, they create a basic human and environmental hazard. So key actions for waste remediation include that at first place, do not allow an insecticide to become obsolete or waste. By judicious planning, you buy only that amount that you can use it, or you use the first come or use the product on first come first service basis. That means whatever came in first in the store must be used first, so that all the older insecticides will be consumed and the newer ones will remain in your stock. And this way you can maintain a chain so that obsolete insecticide do not accumulate in your store. Now, WHO has specifically published, FAO has specifically published environmental management toolkit. And this toolkit is available using this link. And this gives detailed information on how to handle obsolete pesticide, that means date expired insecticides, or how to manage the used containers, or if the soil get contaminated due to spillage of insecticide in your go down or near your go down or storage site, then how to even manage that soil. So this environmental EMTK, what we call in short, is a very valuable tool, which if you are interested, you can also refer and consider it. Then WHO has recommended a classification of pesticides by their hazard. So recently in 2019, we updated this document. This document is available using this link below. And this gives details about how to classify, or how WHO has classified different insecticides according to their risk or hazard. And so as you may know that there are 5 classes of hazards. So extremely hazardous, highly hazardous, moderately hazardous, slightly hazardous, and formulations that are unlikely to present acute hazards. These hazard classes are defined according to their oral or dermal toxicity in animal models. And therefore, for each insecticide or formulation you want to know, this is the document. This gives complete detail of different insecticides alphabetically. Finally, I think this is the last slide, maybe the last but one, which is that insecticide, when you buy either a packet or a bottle, then you'll find a label on either stuck on the pasted on the bottle, or there could be a leaflet that is supplied separately along with the packet. And basically, pesticide label actually is a written, printed, or graphic matter, or it can be attached, or it could be an immediate container thereof. So this provides information about what is the purpose of the insecticide, where, when, and how it will be used, who is allowed to use it, informs the user about the possible hazards and the risk of the product, And therefore, it is very important tool to tell about the users how to handle that bottle or packaging in order to reduce the risk to the workers and to the environment. These pesticide labels can be 3 panel, 2 panel, or 1 panel, depending upon different companies. So this is a 3 panel label, and each panel has some information relating to the product that is packaged inside the bottle or the package. And then this also contains hazard symbols on the bottle or in the leaflet, which will tell the user what are the hazards related to that product. So for example, if you see this particular symbol, then this means it is acutely toxic to humans. Or if you look at this picture, then it can be very hazardous to the fish fauna, or it can be very hazardous to the environment. Or if you look at this picture, then it shows that this product is flammable. Or if you look at this symbol, then it requires that this product must be handled while using gloves. So these are different symbols that educate the user about the product without reading the material too much. So public health workers must therefore acquaint themselves on the possible hazard symbols when they handle or their staff handle pesticides in field. That was it. And if you have any questions relating to my presentation, I will be very happy. Thank you so much.